I stumbled upon an interesting news today, and it's all about how Obsidian might make Fallout after 15 years, but also how Xbox might consider to close them. Now, this second part of this news has been debunked, but as far as I'm concerned, I'm more interested in the first part, that is, that we are going to see another Fallout from Obsidian. Now, this is an interesting one, and I actually think there are good arguments on both sides. As in, they should or they shouldn't make the next Fallout game. Also, the key question isn't can Obsidian make another Fallout? It's mostly, is today's Obsidian the same studio that made New Vegas? Spoiler alert, it isn't, but this is where the debate gets interesting. So if we are considering why it could be a great idea, I can sort of give you a couple reasons. The first reason would be that they understand Fallout's RPG DNA. Even people who don't like modern Obsidian generally agree that the studio still prioritizes player choice, dialogue, faction politics, and role-playing. And these are exactly the things I feel have been de-emphasized since Fallout 4. So if Xbox wants a Fallout that is closer to New Vegas than Fallout 4, Obsidian could be the obvious candidate. The second reason is all about Bethesda being busy. And I can say this is probably my strongest argument for this. If Bethesda doesn't make another Fallout until after The Elder Scrolls 6, we are realistically talking about the early or even mid-2030s for the next Fallout game. And I don't know about you, but this is an enormous gap. I mean, Microsoft has one of gaming's biggest franchises sitting idle while interest is at its highest thanks to the TV show. So giving another studio a Fallout project makes perfect sense if you ask me. And as my final point, I would say that they already proved they can do it. Whether people love or hate New Vegas today, it has one of the strongest reputations in the series. Hell, I would even say it is one of, if not the best RPG ever made. Obviously, this point is actually more nuanced than it first appears, because there are really two different ways to look at Obsidian's history with Fallout. Which basically brings me to why this could be a terrible idea. And the number one reason, like I mentioned before, is that this isn't the same Obsidian. I mean, let's think about it. It has been over 15 years. Many senior developers have left, writers have changed, designers have changed. Leadership has probably evolved, and the studio has nearly doubled in size. So, when people say that the New Vegas developers are making another Fallout, I mean, are they really? Because the logo is still the same, but the people largely aren't. And this is true across the industry. Modern studios often share a name with the team that made their classics, but not necessarily the same talent. Which brings me to my second point. It is fair to say, recent Obsidian games haven't reached New Vegas' reputation. And I'm mostly talking about the WoW and the Outer Worlds too. For example, the criticism that I would mention for these two games are as follows. Shallow exploration, safe quest design, limited player freedom compared to expectations, writing that leans heavily on humor, and combat that feels competent rather than exceptional. If those same design philosophies carried over to Fallout, I can safely say without a shadow of a doubt that New Vegas would be disappointing as fuck. So if you wanna see Fallout with a WoW and the Outer World stuff, I mean, sure, you can. But the question is, especially since there is this huge restructuring at Xbox, if you don't make a game that sells like hotcakes, that essentially means your corporate overlords will probably shut you down. So yeah, like I said, by all means, experiment as much as you want, but if I was the head of Xbox, I would probably say to them something along the lines of, make the game that people like based on what you have in Fallout New Vegas, and don't put any other bullshit that you normally put in your games. Because if you don't do that, it's not going to be a party time for either Xbox or Obsidian for that matter. Now, next point kinda goes together with the previous one, and it's all about nostalgia being a dangerous benchmark. You see, New Vegas is almost mythical game. So people don't just want another Fallout, they want to feel exactly how they felt in 2010. Now, I could argue that this is not that hard to make, But in today's gaming industry, this is almost impossible to pull out. Even if a new game scored 9 out of 10, which by the way is meaningless, people will probably compare every quest, every faction, every dialogue choice to New Vegas. And like I said, based on the state of the gaming industry, that's an incredibly high bar. I mean, it's still doable, and I would argue you can replicate what made New Vegas amazing. But the main question is this: do people who are now in Obsidian even know what made New Vegas amazing? Because as far as I'm concerned, judging from the games they released recently, I don't think they do. Now, I talked about nostalgia, but I would say the bigger problem from nostalgia is actually expectations, because, I mean, it's Fallout New Vegas 2. People are going to jump on hype train like there's no tomorrow. Hell, even I would do that maybe 10-15 years ago if I didn't know better. But just think about this. If New Vegas 2 actually happens, I bet you that people will immediately expect stuff like Kaiser's Legion, NCR, Mr. House, the Mojave, same level of writing, same freedom, same atmosphere. And to be honest, that's perfectly normal. I mean, you are making New Vegas 2, right? So what we had in the first game, you need to have in the second game, and then some. So in that sense, if the game delivers anything less, you could say the backlash could be enormous. I should point out when I talk about these things that the biggest concern for me isn't gameplay, it's actually writing. Because let's be real, New Vegas' greatest strength wasn't its combat or graphics. That was basically there because it has to be there. The real reason why New Vegas was, or rather is still amazing, is that nearly every faction had believable motivations. There wasn't a clear good guy. And we are still seeing people arguing over Reddit about NCR, Legion, House, Yes Man, and the choices that follow after you pick one of these factions. And the debate is still going on, 15 years later. And that, dear listener, is called exceptional writing. So in that sense, I don't think recent Obsidian games have consistently reached the level of moral complexity. And the recent writing of these games would be something along lines of more straightforward or more comedic. And if that tone carried into Fallout, it could lose some of what made New Vegas memorable. But you know what's interesting here? Ironically, my biggest fear isn't that Obsidian will make Fallout. It's that Microsoft told them that people love New Vegas, so go make another one. And that is extremely detrimental, especially if they don't understand that people who made Fallout New Vegas what it is now are not in your company anymore. And if you are trying to emulate the success that happened 15 years ago without the most important element, which is human resources, and not to mention, if people don't have a clue what made Fallout New Vegas special, then you are basically going towards a cliff which you will never recuperate from, because you will end up flying off that cliff like Wild Coyote, and then soon gravity will take over and you will probably make one impressive human pancake because you forgot to pack your bloody parachute. Now, new Fallout, or rather Fallout New Vegas 2, can spend all its time referencing the first game and bringing back old characters, if that's possible given the fact what happened in the first game and the lore and all that stuff. And you can probably get certain points from fan service in that sense. But if the core design philosophy is lacking, which is deep role-playing, meaningful choices, moral complexity, factions, and player agency, then you're not gonna make a good game, that's 100% certain. So if you see Fallout New Vegas 2 being made by Obsidian, or any announcement happens where Fallout New Vegas 2 is accompanied by Obsidian Entertainment logo, know this: that is not the same studio that made the original Fallout New Vegas, and that logo is just there for marketing purposes and to attract people who know nothing about first game, or to kinda, I would say, bamboozle most of the people into hyping themselves without actually using their brain to figure out that things are widely different than they were 15 years ago. Because as far as I'm concerned, Obsidian is definitely not capable of making Fallout New Vegas 2. And I will gladly eat my words if this thing ever becomes a reality, but somehow, I don't think that's ever gonna happen. And that's basically my take on this news. Thanks very much for watching, and as always, Like, share, subscribe, comment, all that good stuff. And that's it from me, until the next one.